welcome back to my channel where I talk about the topic of autism from the point of being autistic. Hi. So today we're going to talk about the term Asperger's and functioning labels. So Asperger's was taken out of the DSM about 10 years ago in 2013. So I know you're probably wondering, why is it not used anymore? Well, it has a pretty disturbing history. So the person that created it was named Dr. Hans Asperger, who was the one that was defined of coming to the term autism as a whole, in the 1940s. So he wasn't technically a member of the Nazis, but he did identify children with disabilities and sending people to be euthanized or to be experimented on. So that is one of the reasons why we don't use it anymore. There is a history tied into the Nazis. And I know, like, one of the biggest problems with some people still using it, at least in the community, is that that was what they were actually given as a diagnosis. So for them to go from always calling it Asperger's to calling it autism, like, it sometimes has to be a generational thing. But there's a lot of people that are like, no, this is obviously rooted in something awful, and we know now that Asperger's is the same as autism because it's a spectrum. And when this was called this, well, we know more now, right? But let's keep talking, shall we? Because of this, there has also been some ignorance and hatred in the community due to Asperger's as a term. There's something that is known within the community called Aspie supremacy, and that being Aspie or high functioning is more important than other autistics in different levels. The idea of functioning labels is super harmful to the community, and that is why that was also taken away. And since we now know that it's a spectrum, right? Like, not, if you have met somebody with autism, you have met one person with autism. Everybody has, a lot of us have a lot of the similarities within each other, but at the same time, there's so many traits that you are not everybody's gonna be the same. We're humans. Everybody's different. Everybody has different needs. Everybody has different traits. So there within that has caused a big issue in the community, especially with people that are creators like me. A lot of times people who are either completely nonverbal or have more support needs gets put to the wayside when it comes to creating, because a lot of discrimination is used against that, right? Like, even within the autism community, when it comes to other people that are like, well, my 4-year-old nephew did this, so I don't think you are autistic. That kind of thing all comes into play. And therein is a big issue. I am seeing, especially in the TikTok community, where not only people of different levels are not being seen or heard, but also people of color are not being heard as well, and they have a whole different fight than, say, a cis white autistic female. And that in itself is another issue that we're having within this community. These voices are all needing to be heard. I try my best to push forward any content I see of anybody on the spectrum who is needing to be heard more. And a lot of this kind of goes into play because there is issues with racism in the autism community, especially with like Black females, because of the whole, angry or over emotional Black woman trope, which is completely BS. Because obviously it's not just within the autistic community. This is for Black females for any kind of medical issue, and they're completely overseen. So we really need to uplift their voices more, and especially the nonverbal autism community, if they have access to making content and they're trying to get their voices out, they're trying to talk about their experiences, we need to uplift them and we need to push their content forward. I think that's super important. But also the idea of high functioning is incredibly harmful as well for people that appear high functioning, right? People who are autistic or neurotypical will see somebody who is high functioning and will be like, well, you don't need any help. You're just fine. Clearly you're high functioning because you can have a job. Like, there are issues on both sides of this. The idea of functioning labels have ties back to the Nazi extermination, because of the fact that if you were high functioning and you appeared better and could form better with society, those were the ones that weren't euthanized. And that is another reason why the idea of Asperger's and functioning labels needs to stop. It's incredibly has harmful ties to the past, but also just, again, if somebody appears high functioning doesn't actually mean that they don't need help. This ignores the needs. Everybody has different needs, different traits. Personally, I was told that when I got my diagnosis that I fit technically under level 1 and level 2 needs because of my different traits that I have. And because of that is another reason to prove, like, I have worked my entire life. I am now part-time because of burnout and health issues and pain issues. But on top of my mental abilities have gone down because of dealing with burnout and all of that. But just because I seem functioning, because I can highly mask, does not mean that I'm doing great. I could still use quite a bit of support. Luckily, my boyfriend is very supportive as much as he can be. My parents always were as well. Like, I was never forced to make my own appointments. Like, they recognized that they needed to make the appointments for me. And now with a lot of my personal health care place, like, I can do things online, which is so helpful for me. But even then, it's like a lot with my executive dysfunction issues and whatnot, that like I would benefit from having certain things of support, like a support animal and if I had somebody that could constantly go with me to all my appointments would be better. Like my boyfriend tries to when he can, but he works full-time job and can't always be there. But he tries to when he can, especially when it's like a new doctor for a new issue. But they're like, sorry, I'm getting like all jumbled, so bear with me. But for like, I'm kind of a good representation of why functioning labels is not accurate and is not okay, because for what people see, they could think I'm just fine, and I'm not exactly fine. I just happen to have a good support system for the most part, you know, like obviously like when work comes into play for other people, like they can't be there all the time. So it just goes to prove even further that this is a spectrum. We all have different traits, to different severities, and we should not be seen as Asperger's or functioning labels. They're harmful to us in the end. They continue to push this narrative that like, just because somebody can highly mask that we don't need help, and that's not true. And it in turn causes a lot of hatred and ignorance towards people that do need really high support needs. And I don't want this to get confused with the idea of levels. Okay, so levels is what the doctors and criteria use now as a way of identifying what kind of support we need. So levels are actually helpful for the like healthcare end of it. Given there's not really so much support for us, is there? I mean, hopefully in the future, like that becomes more helpful for us, because really, support needs sometimes is mainly helpful for when you are a young child going through school, and or if you are on the higher support need levels, it's recognized more to get you help. So it kind of puts us, the rest of us, kind of at bay, but at the same time, it helps to recognize that like what we need. But at the same time, levels are not really for autistics and neurotypicals to be using against us, and I hope it doesn't get used against us. But the whole idea of the ignorance and the misunderstanding from autistics and neurotypicals is that when they see somebody that they will call high functioning, is because every single one of them that don't know anything about autism only think of level 3s as autistic, which I know I'm guilty from that in the past, because we weren't really taught anything else about autism. And I think that's why the idea of myself being autistic was under the radar for so long, because I didn't know the whole aspect of what autism was, which now obviously I know. It's just one reason why I'm doing all this education for others through videos and content, because I think it's super important to know that the more that you put this out there, the more people will actually understand autistics more. And that's another reason why I really want content pushed for POC and higher support needs content creators, because we need to see autism in every aspect of it out there for everybody to see and understand, and for us to get more acceptance and awareness that we desperately need. So yeah, this is just a quick kind of oversight of everything. There is a lot more in-depth information about the history of Asperger's. There is a book by a woman, I can't remember her name. It would be easy to like Google it, but she was like researching more about Asperger's because I believe her son had it. And in her research to find out more about it was when it was uncovered about the whole Nazi history past. So there's a lot more information out there about it. I just kind of did a quick overview. So I definitely recommend you looking more into it if you want to see more details about it. There is a lot of information out there. But yeah, my main reason for this video is to talk about how we really need to end the whole idea of Aspie supremacy. There is a lot of, I think there's a lot of people out there who are like level ones, especially like white female men that don't even recognize that they are doing this possibly, which is upsetting, right? But it needs to end. It's a spectrum. We are all the same. We are all fighting the same fight. But we do also need to push forward these other voices that desperately need to be heard so that we can get more of an understanding out there for people. So yeah, if you ever hear anybody talk about high functioning or they use the term Asperger's, correct them. Don't do it in a malicious way because they might not be doing it intentional as a malicious act, but it needs to be out there that these terms are harmful and they need to end so that we are all treated better. So I hope everybody is having a wonderful day, and I will see you for the next video. Bye.